Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in this week, and for everybody that watched the video last week and left wonderful comments and asked questions, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But yeah, let's get into it. So I just wanted to show a little bit of the process of how I actually get the picture onto the leather. What I do first is actually draw it in Procreate on an iPad using like a Apple Pencil or whatever. I find it's just easier to be able to make little, size edits, take out different elements and stuff, put them back in, resize things. It's just a lot quicker than drawing by hand. For me personally, I've found. Once I have something that's ready, I then print it out and trace it onto transfer paper. So it's just like a really thin plastic. Most leather supply stores will have it. It's nice because it doesn't get ruined when you're trying to transfer onto a damp piece of leather. It works great. I like to save mine too. I have like a whole little sketchbook full of all the tooling stencils I've made, and yeah, it's really just a great material to use. I find it doesn't like rip or tear or anything like that. So then we're gonna move on to stropping our swivel knife blade, which is very important. When I'm working on a bigger project, I find I do it a couple times throughout. You just want to make sure your knife is nice and clean and as sharp as possible. Then you're not going to run into any sort of snags. You're not going to be pushing your leather in a weird way when you're doing small circles and stuff. Just, you know, really make sure you're taking care of those blades. They're just so important. So I had a lot of people ask last week what kind of swivel knife I'm using. This is something I've gone over a few times. This is called a yokeless swivel knife. I have a short video also on my page that you can check out, which has the manufacturer's name and where you can find them at. I've really found it's nice and easy for myself to use. I've heard some people aren't the hugest fan of them. They prefer the sort of saddled, like more traditional swivel knives, and that's fine. In this craft, we take a lot of time testing and trying and finding the tools that really work for us. And like I said, for myself personally, this is a tool that I've found that works quite nicely, and I really enjoy it. So, as I said last time too, one of the key important things I find in my own tooling is just making sure your knife is held nice and perpendicular to your piece. You don't want to be cutting into anything sideways. You just want nice, straight, clean lines. And if that means having to move your piece to be a little bit more comfortable, that's totally fine too. I know some people do prefer to have their piece kind of locked down with like a little bit of a weight or whatever, but I find myself moving my piece around to suit me and what's most comfortable is the best method. And sometimes coming up here, you make a little mistake, totally blew it on that line, but that'll get hidden with a bit of the texturing and tooling that'll come up in the future. So don't think that your project is ruined because you slipped. Remember that these things are handmade, so mistakes are fine. They're beautiful. You can work them in different ways. It's not a big deal. And like I said, as you'll notice as I move along, I do move my piece around a lot. And I do understand to some that's a little bit unconventional, but you'll see why it works here when I have something like I'm coming up to the intersection of a line, because I don't want to go over top of the line previous. I will spin my piece and just kind of connect those going the opposite direction. And then I move on to the circles. And so one benefit I've found with this particular swivel knife is with how easily it moves. It's quite simple to get a circle without having to lift your knife or move your piece. And here we move on to the tooling. And so in this video, I actually did a little bit better of a job of not having my hands totally in the way. This was the second piece that I shot. So we're getting a little better. Like I said, these videos will get a little bit better in time, a little easier to follow. And so this is the heavy checked beveler. It's a 20-degree beveler. I had a couple of people ask about that as well, and I wasn't even sure myself, so I looked into it. So it is 20 degrees. You can get a steeper beveler too if you don't want it to sort of spread out quite so far, and that's actually something I think I would look into myself personally. I found such a big part of this is really, and I've said it before and I'll keep saying it, is trial and error. I found out that these are the stamps that I like to use because I like the finished look that they give. You know, there's tons of instruction on, you know, traditional styles like Sheridan or like florals or figure carving and such, and they're fantastic. And I've watched a lot of them myself, you know, that's kind of how I learned how to get into this. But the most productive way that I found that I've improved tooling is just by using pieces of scrap and just trying them out and seeing how different bevelers or lifters or shaders, etc., like how they move the leather so that I can then take it and apply it to sculpting the leather in such a manner. So when I first started tooling, just about a year and a half ago now, I found I watched a lot of videos. I watched a lot of, you know, like the classic Sheridan style floral carving, you know, a little bit of figure carving, but that's not quite my forte, really. Anyways, I found one of the most helpful things was just having pieces of scrap to try out the different stamps and bevelers and modeling spoons and whatnot with, you know, like something that you're not scared of ruining if it ends up just being a piece that you keep, you know, as a reminder, like almost like a little bit of a test to see where your improvement over, you know, like 6 months to a year to whatever goes. And, you know, like I feel even at this stage, I still have a lot of learning to do, and I pick up different things on every single project that I've worked on. So, you know, don't ever get discouraged if things aren't working out perfectly the first time. Like, I still occasionally drive a stamp right through the back of the leather, and then you know you're having to deal with having to line something, or you know, in an extreme case, kind of start over, and that's okay. You know, these things happen. It's not the end of the world, and you take a lesson and you move on. So for the last two videos, this has been the process behind the bag that I did in collaboration with Corter Leather. There's a link in the description to the bag pattern. It's an absolutely incredible design, drawn up by Kaylina. It's just so open to so many different styles and tons of room for tooling. So check it out. Give it a try. I know I'm going to be building some of my own after this, but yeah, it's just been such an incredible project to be a part of, and I feel very fortunate for that opportunity. Now, having said that, I think for the next couple of videos, maybe, I'd like to try and keep this going like once a week or once every couple of weeks. And I think for the next one, what I would love to do, and I would love some feedback on this too, is to come up with, you know, a pattern we can all kind of like tool along together. So maybe something like a traditional, just like a tattoo style rose. It'll be something that's available for free. So like I said, you can print it out, download it, print it out, and sort of tool along with the video. Like I said, please let me know if that's something everybody would be interested in. I would love to hear some feedback. So here we'll move on to a little bit of the painting. Again, this is the Alpha Flex line by Alpha 6. It's nice and bright, super great colors. I know last time I got asked a lot about what kind of a clear coat I use, and it really varies. Like I've tried quite a few different ones. Acrylic Resin is the classic. It's readily available everywhere. It's fairly cheap. It works quite great. I'm a huge fan of the Angelus High Gloss Clear Coat myself, and I've started using the Alpha 6 a little bit as well too. Super brilliant shine, really nice to go on. But yeah, try a couple different ones, see what you really like using, and go from there. And so here, this is a very fun trick. I came to learn that you can actually tint the neutral antiquing paste yourself. So what I do is I put a little bit just in like a little paper cup from the dollar store or whatever, and I mix in whatever paint I want. And so for this one, I wanted some of the antiquing to actually be kind of like a starry sort of silvery tone versus, you know, the classic black or brown, which obviously you couldn't do over this because the areas that it's going over are all black. But so what I've done is like I'll just mix up a little bit. I'll try a little bit sort of like in an inconspicuous area, but you apply it just like any other antiquing you would use, only you've tinted it yourself. And it's a nice little trick to always have the color that you want. So in this one I used a couple of color shifting paints from Alpha 6. This was the Mermaid, I think, and the Opal as well too. Like I said, I just wanted something really subtle and shiny so that as you moved the finished bag, you kind of caught that little glimmer of it. So again, same as any other antique, you just put a little bit on, let it wait a couple seconds, and then rub it right off. And from there, I'll go on and I'll do sort of the darker areas and colors. I try to like keep it away from the lighter stuff as much as possible, but you will get like a little bit of overlap here and there. And so I usually find if I'm doing a project with a couple of different antique colors, I end up going over it a few times, like just to really get the balance that I want. I personally like to use paintbrushes to apply the antiquing just for that little bit of control. I know, some people use, and I've also done it in the past too, where I've just used, like a balled up piece of t-shirt material or a rag, or I've seen some people use old toothbrushes, works really good too. It just kind of gets it down into all of those details nicely. I've also just straight up used my hand before too. There's really no science to it, and you will figure out what your favorite method is sort of as you go along. But as you can see here, there's a few different, I have the black, on the cats I actually used a brown just because I wanted to keep it sort of more towards their skin color, and then there's like the silver and the shiny antiquing sort of off in the background. So once it's had a little bit of time to settle, you're just going to take your white rag t-shirt material. I just buy boxes of it from Home Depot, or I just cut up old t-shirts that I'm no longer wearing myself. And once you're happy with it, just give it that one more layer of clear coat and you're good to go. I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching, and please leave any questions in the comment section. See you next week.